Well, I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of the Empower Grief Journey podcast. I'm your host, Chris Mamoni, and I'm an acceptance coach who helps people heal from grief, loss, and trauma to discover their self-acceptance and step into their personal power. This podcast is your dedicated space for healing, growth, and transformation. Each episode shares insightful and inspirational stories along with practical tools and actionable insights that can help guide you along your healing journey. Today, I have an awesome guest for us, guys. I've gotten to know Annie over the last 2 months. She is a phenomenal, I like to call her my favorite Aussie friend down in Australia. And we connected through similar trauma that we went through, different circumstance, but similar trauma. And we have just been working together ever since. And I wanted to give Annie a chance to share her story because it's a very powerful story about rising from the ashes and learning how to heal from trauma. And so, a little bit about Annie. She's a licensed Heal Your Life coach and the founder of Rise Up and Heal, a platform dedicated to helping people reclaim their self-worth and heal from toxic relationships. With a background in empowering others through affirmations, self-love, and healing practices, Annie guides her clients to rewrite their stories and find peace after narcissistic abuse. She's also the host of the Rise Up and Heal podcast and the author of her new book coming out hopefully soon, The Narcissistic Playbook. Annie, I want to welcome you to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you ever so much. It is so great to be here, and I so appreciate you. So thank you.
Well, I'm really looking forward to you. I know you just said we were talking before we jumped on here that this is your first time being a guest on a podcast. How's that feel?
I'm feeling a bit nervous to be. 'Cause I'm like, oh, I'm not used to this. But I'm actually really looking forward to it. It's actually nice to be, I guess, on the other side rather than the hosting. So I'm actually feeling a bit relaxed because I don't have to stress over the technological stuff, I guess. So it's quite good.
I love that. Well, I'm just really excited to have you on the show. I was a guest on your podcast about a
Yeah.
couple months back, and I had a really fun time recording with you. That was a good time. And I love that we had a friendship come out of that. That's what I really
Yeah.
love. And I'm excited for my listeners today to hear your story because you went through a lot, and I'm not going to ruin it for everybody because I'm going to let you share that. But I just love that you went through such adversity, went through an abusive relationship, went through a lot of financial struggles and hardship through that, and you've risen up from the ashes to become Annie. You reclaimed Annie.
Yeah.
And I'm just so excited for you to share this story because of how powerful it is. So without my further rambling, I'm gonna turn that over to you to share with our listeners Annie's
You.
story.
All right. It's definitely a story. And I think in relation to exactly what you do with the sense of grief, I mean, grief can be associated with so many different things. It just doesn't have to be the loss of a loved one. It can absolutely be the loss of a relationship, the loss of a life in the sense of the life that you once knew. It can also be the loss of and the grieving of the future that you honestly thought that you were going to have. So I guess for my story, there's been absolutely a lot of grief in me trying to find myself, and to basically put me where I am today. And if somebody had have said to me 10 years ago that I would be here, doing podcasts, writing a book, coaching people on narcissism and stuff like that, I'd be like, yeah, I don't think so. But it's been an incredible journey, and it's amazing where it leads you. I guess my story, I was in a very long-term relationship with a person that I had met when I was about 17 years of age. Uh, Throughout that time, I can honestly say to you, it's only been basically 4 years ago that I actually learnt what narcissism was, and that it was brought to the forefront that I actually was the victim of domestic violence in the sense of the psychological and the emotional kind. So I honestly, 4 years prior to this, I had no idea. I knew things weren't great. I knew that absolutely I could be treated better. But on the same token, I had been with this person, like I said, since I was 17. And I just thought, this is just the way we were. And also, I mean, I absolutely loved this person with my absolute heart and soul. And I do have love still for this person. And I am, as much as everything I've been through, I am so incredibly grateful for my journey. Because if it wasn't for my journey, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I certainly wouldn't be sitting here on this podcast with you. So it's it's been an absolute incredible journey. And there's so many, I guess, stories within the story. But leading up to me finding out about, I guess, putting me in this situation of where I am, it was probably, I'm just at the end of 2006. I was heavily pregnant with our second child. I had a child who was not almost 2. My partner at the time was joining the services, the police academy. Bills and that had come in. And of course, we didn't have much money. Of course, I wasn't working. I'm, 3 months shy of giving birth to our second child. And there was a lot of financial pressure and I guess stress there. So these bills had come in. We'd had a conversation, I guess. It was pretty a heated, relative, not heated, but anyway, more of a maybe an argument, I guess. Where it was the stress and the pressure. And I understand that for this person that, he has this wife at home, he's got a second one on the way. We have a toddler. Where we're going to get the money from to be able to pay for these bills. So I did suggest we had a line of credit. We were very fortunate that we did not have a mortgage on our property at the time. I will say that he was extremely good at paying off the mortgage. So, we lived off my wage when I was working at the time. Like I said, I suggested that we use this line of credit, which that was not an option in his eyes. In my eyes, I thought it would be a good idea just to help us through, because it was quite a few $1,000s worth. To cut a long story short, over the next 7.5-year period, I basically used that line of credit to pay bills. We bought a houseboat with that. We bought a car with that. I'm not saying what I did was the right thing to do, and I certainly then did not tell him or let him know what I had done. It came out in 2014. It's interesting how life has a way of literally, I guess, throwing you under the bus sometimes, or I'll call it throwing me under the bus. Is I was working full time. I had that stress and that pressure and that shame and that guilt that I had placed upon myself by using that line of credit, which I was paying, which I mean, I wasn't making advance payments, but I was covering it. This particular morning, I was also actually doing network marketing on the side, and I'd received an email. I'd just earned an extra $400 from the company that I was doing network marketing for, and so I was really excited. I woke up, I was happy. I was still definitely one of those people that was like, oh my God, shut the alarm off. I don't want to go to work today. And I can honestly say from the age of 17, I've never felt secure in myself, and I never had a good relationship with myself. I was I guess, had a very low self-esteem and a low opinion of myself, which apparently it turns out, narcissists really love that. So I had no
They
clue.
do.
Um, and I'm very empathic, and I'm very loving, and I'm very caring. So this particular day, I woke up, I was happy. I've gotten up to go to work, and I just remember going into the bathroom, and all of a sudden this voice was like, you either stay the same for the next 20 odd years, or you do something about it. And it was really like something had taken over me. And the next thing I knew, I'm walking back to the bedroom, and I'm saying to this person whom I loved and adored, whom I'd been with for basically 20 odd years, I had known them for more than half my life, turning around and saying, I don't think I can be married to you anymore. So it was interesting. I mean, clearly there was shock on both sides, because and then I'm in this automated mode of, I think this is an interesting thing, is our coping mechanisms to a certain degree cut in. And I all of a sudden went on to automatic pilot, in the sense of, I'm getting kids ready, I'm getting ready for work, I'm having a shower, I'm going to work. And when I got to work that particular day, I could not get out of the car. I was so upset, and I was in so much shock as to, what the hell have I done? Like, what have I done? And the whole money thing hadn't come into it yet. So, and in that conversation of me saying to this person that I no longer wanted to stay married to them, I had also, which I had kept buried for 12 years, was we had done an overseas trip around the world, and I'd explained that whilst we were away traveling, that I was actually raped in a car park. So I had kept all of that within me too. So it was like all of a sudden, all of this stuff was just coming up and coming out to the surface. So you can honestly imagine the enormity and the absolute shock, because I've literally just blown up not only this other person's world, but I've blown up my own. Like I said, I went to work, I was an absolute mess. I didn't know what was going to happen. I had no clue in the sense of what the next step was. I honestly, it was just, everything just had to bubble, and everything came out. I did find out, after having a conversation with my mother, that this person had found out what I did with the money. So this person was extremely angry. And interestingly enough, I still went home. And when I came home that afternoon, our children were crying, asking me why I stole the money. And I was like, I didn't steal the money. I used the money to pay the bills. It was the bank's money. I didn't steal it. What endured, I guess, from that particular point in 2014 to basically 2019 was a period of, we went to counseling. The night that it had come out, I was physically assaulted. I was kicked out of the house. I lived with family members for basically 6 weeks. I didn't even have a pair of shoes on my feet. It honestly, it was a really horrendous time, and there was a lot of shock in that. Everybody, of course, is then finding out that what I had done with the money, because I had not told anybody what I had done or what I was doing. And it later came out when I went into therapy that the driving force of me using that money was like to get attention, because money has always been at the forefront of that particular relationship. Money was everything. And I know a few weeks after my world had blown up, that we had and saw this marriage counselor, and we shared what had happened and what had taken place that particular day. And I remember the counselor actually asking this person and saying, if you had to choose between Annie and the money, who would you choose? And of course, the response was my family. But inwardly inside me, I really wanted to scream out bullshit. Like I could feel it. But what was also interesting was that the counselor then turned around and said, I don't believe you. And I remember looking at the counselor going, wow, wow, this person sees this person gets it. But even then, I wasn't getting it. I had absolutely no clue as to what I was getting, but I also knew that I had a lot of shame, a lot of guilt. There was a lot of embarrassment. There was, I guess, the release of everything that was coming out. It was also the unknown of where this journey would take me. And so fast forward basically 5.5 years, things went great within that period. There were definitely moments there. There was definitely one particular time where I seriously did contemplate ending my life. During that period, it was actually twice, but the second time I was absolutely, that was it. Thankfully, again, I didn't. I'm still here, but I do fully understand how and why people get to that point, especially when you are reminded on a daily basis of what you had done wrong and the mistake that you had caused. It crippled me. It really, really crippled me. It was also during that time frame that I came across the work of Louise Hay, and that I knew that something had to change. And for that to change, I had to change. So I sporadically, within that sort of 5.5 year period to 2019, had started working on myself and opening myself up to this, I guess, this other journey. Like I said, 2019, the end of 2019, this person had decided that they couldn't stay married to me anymore due to the money, what I did with the money, because they claimed that they didn't know. Became apparent, and another family member had expressed that this person had known the whole time. So that was basically that. What then became more apparent was the fact that there were other people that were involved in our marriage that I had no clue about. So the commitment and the trust was absolutely broken there, because there was these third party intervention. And again, it wasn't until I honestly thought like this person was clearly under a lot of emotional stress. They sought out to see a therapist. This therapist also wanted to see me. Again, I thought I was in the wrong. I've gone to step in to meet this psychologist, and it was then brought to my attention that, that I was actually the victim in this relationship. So I was dealing with a lot of everything that I had done as well. Of course, you're working full time, being a mum and, running a household, this, that, and the other. But it was also then this other part, which was also breaking apart, was this relationship of almost 30 years was just crumbling at the wayside. And when it did come to the fact of the whole complete and utter separation, there was so much grief for me that I honestly, the pain was absolutely extenuating, because we all feel it. It's that loss of that person. It was the loss of my home that I had known for 20 odd years. It was the loss of my family unit fully breaking down. It was the loss of knowing that this person whom I absolutely love with my heart and soul was turning into being somebody that I didn't even recognize. I didn't know who this person now was, and I was trying to decipher if it was the one and the same person. because it wasn't. And that, I think, is the true thing with narcissism, is that they are very good at mirroring, they're very good at masking, they are very good at, especially covert narcissists, of undermining and manipulating and doing all of that. And it's not until now that I've come out on the other side can I see that so clearly. And it was also the grief of the future. And here was this other person that had taken my place, who was living my life. That was my life. What this person was now doing with this person was, that's what we used to do. Do you know what I mean? So there's been a lot of grief about that. And it's certainly been one hell of an education in the sense of learning about narcissistic personality disorder, as well as discovering myself.
Well, Annie, it sounds like you had quite the story there. I remember you saying a few minutes ago that you recognized a pivot point in your life when you spoke up for yourself. You said you were a very empathetic, very caring person, but something came into your mind that said, "Do I want to do another 20 years like this? Is this in alignment of who I am?" And I want to focus on that moment for a second, because I think a lot of us get very focused in that moment of maintaining, if you will, the chaos we're comfortable with, but we're very scared to go near the uncertainty that will bring us happiness. And I think a lot of people live in that chaos a lot of times, but it brings destruction, kind of like how your story unfolded when you said, I just decided that this marriage was no longer serving me. And I had the courage to stand up and say it wasn't working. It's no longer something good for me. Um, I can't imagine what kind of emotions were going through your mind at that point, but to realize that you made that choice for you. And I think that's so powerful, to really say that I built this life and I've gotten used to it in this capacity, but now it's just not serving, it's not working, and I've got to do this other thing. And letting all that kind of set the ball in motion, from what I heard, of all these changes that happened in your life. Um, and you wouldn't even be here today doing what you're doing, coaching on narcissism and helping other women regain their confidence through these abusive relationships. How does it make you feel when you look backwards and you see that journey you took? And it wasn't easy by any demeanor, but when you see that it set you up to be where you are today, to be able to serve and contribute at the level you're at, how does that make you feel?
I feel like a completely different person. I feel like that when I share my story of the past, that it's somebody that, to a certain degree, that I don't even recognize. And I guess now, doing what I'm doing, I feel I feel so authentic, because I am living my truth. And back then, before everything had come out about the whole of what I had done with the money, I was not living authentically. And the truth always comes out. And it was actually at that pivotal moment that I learned just how important speaking my truth and being completely honest about anything and everything is so valuable, even when it is truly difficult and it is really hard. I mean, I had to sit there with counselors and say that I wanted to take my own life. I wanted to sit there and say, I can't do this anymore, because I was struggling. And because I ended up speaking my truth, it then also propelled me onto this journey. And even though it had all come out back then, I still went back with this person for another 5.5 years and endured. Honestly, it's been a journey. I'm walking across that floor, I tell you. But now it's absolutely incredible, because now I'm just being me. I'm finally stepping in to me. I've rediscovered, to a certain degree, who I was back when I was 17, prior to stepping into basically that section of my life.
Well, I think that's a powerful thing about grief that I've caught on to with all the podcast episodes I've done. I've heard people share stories in the capacity in which you've gone through things in a very different area, obviously. But what I've come to find that's very common about grief is that it's a personal gateway for transformation, and that a lot of people don't realize. But the person you are before grief hits and the person after are two totally different people. And that, by the way, that does not mean bad things, by the way, because I know a lot of people will interpret it that because society tells us that. But it's actually the opposite. It's a good thing. And I love that you shared your story the way you did today, because what I heard is that Annie lost herself along the way. Annie forgot who Annie was, and then it was through this process of abuse, this process of financial hardships, this trying to make things work, living inauthentically, which I thought was really big for you to admit in a certain way, because a lot of us are scared to say that we were out of alignment with who we really are. And to say that walking through this grief process has allowed you to reclaim your authenticity and create this brand new life, this brand new Annie that you rediscovered, I think is such a beautiful gift out of the ashes of everything that happened.
Mm. Absolutely. And I think that is the thing. Like you said, grief really does put you on this journey. And we all have a choice. I mean, grief can 100% consume us. And I think it's really important in the initial stages to absolutely allow that grief to consume you in the sense and to express how you're feeling. That's the biggest thing, is letting it all out and really expressing it. But then it's making that choice to go, you know what? This has happened. This is painful. It hurts like nothing else. But what can I do with this to make it somewhat better and easier? Because the memories are always going to be there. We don't ever forget what we've been through. We don't ever forget that experience. But we absolutely then have this choice, this opportunity to do something with it. And for some of us, we might go down a period of alcoholism. We might turn to drugs. We might turn to for doing what to doing whatever, because we can become so engulfed by it and so depressed and live in a world of depression until all of a sudden something else will come along and move us up out of that. And it's making that choice. It's making that choice to go, you know what? I can continue down this path if I choose to, but it's not serving me. What can I do that's going to better serve me? And especially with people when they are sharing their stories. And this is what I so love about podcasts. And this is why I so love about what you are doing, Chris, is that you're giving everybody this platform to talk about grief, to normalize it, because we all go through it. And grief is something that people tend to go, oh, okay, you're grieving, oh, you've lost this person, or this has happened, oh, that's a shame, but brush yourself off, move on. And it's like, well, you can move on, but you still carry stuff. But it's important to release everything that's there and to serve you. We only have one opportunity in this particular life at this particular point in time. So why not go and use what you have been through to not only benefit yourself, but to benefit others? And that's what I love about your platform, is that everybody else is now having this opportunity to what's been trapped in here to be now able to express their story.
Well, I think that's the real. I really appreciate you sharing that, by the way. I love the way you said that, because you're right. Grief is something that we push under the carpet. We cover it up. We try to hide it, run from it. And I've always told people, especially that I coach, that if you've ever watched a Chinese ping pong tournament and you watch that ball go flying across the table 100,000 times, all that stuff you hold in, all that grief you suppress, all those feelings, all those emotions, there's a little ping pong inside you bouncing around, and it's going to cause a lot of health problems, not just mentally, but physically. Um,
Absolutely.
and when you give yourself a space, which is why I do this podcast in the first place, to give people a space to share their story, it's allowing them to release it and get themselves to just be in that place of, this didn't happen to me, but it happened for me. And I'm able to see that. And then also to be able to say, my grief journey can actually help somebody. My grief journey can share this and this with somebody who might be stuck or might not know how to navigate grief, or might not have ever been told how to express emotions, for that matter. And, I think it's such a beautiful gift that we end up getting. I always call it the gift in shitty wrapping paper is what I like to call it. Was it fun going through narcissistic abuse and going through domestic violence? Absolutely not. Was it painful to go through the financial difficulties you guys went through? No. But did that thing give you that gift and that blessing in the end? It did. It forced you back into alignment of who you are. It pushed you into that place to serve and contribute at a level higher than yourself. And that's what I think a lot of people I wish would see with grief is that it doesn't have to be this big, ugly, nasty, negative thing that we all talk about. There's good to be had in the middle of that storm, and it's just a matter of being able to see it. I went through depression twice after losing my grandfather, once after losing my son. It got so heavy and so just dark that I just said, I can't take it. It was literally like, I got to do something with this. And I've shared with people that grief has the power to create and it has the power to destroy. And if you let it destroy you, I mean, it will do some damage. It'll mess up relationships. It'll cost you a job. It'll put you sometimes down suicidal thoughts that I've seen with certain people. But when you step over to the other side and say, I can create now, I have a gift, and you really realize that it happened for you. And then you start saying, there's people that went through something similar to me, but they didn't have somebody. So now I can go out there and help them because of what I went through. And now you found meaning through contribution. And I think that's the best gift that we get out of our trauma.
Absolutely. And I think and I love what you've just said too, that grief really wakes you up. And I know for me, I was so shut down. And even for my whole entire life to a certain degree, I'd always gone along keeping everybody else happy. I was definitely one of those people that I would not rock the boat. I wouldn't really speak up, just to keep everybody happy. And in the process of doing that, I was shutting and suppressing myself. So, I've had people in my life who were quite controlling, who were quite dominant to a certain degree. And so me being me would shut down. And if anything, with everything within my journey now, it's bringing everything now more to the forefront, where it's like, well, you know what, I am allowed to speak. I am allowed to share my story, because this is, like you said, it's bigger than me. All of this is bigger than us. And when we can come together as a collective and share our stories, my goodness, look at the amount of people that we can be helping, because each and every one of us goes through some sort of trauma or adversity in this lifetime. Earth is really quite cruel like that. It's a classroom where none of us have got the same exam paper. We're all we're all flying by the seat of our pants, and it's like, here's your exam paper for today, here's yours, and it's completely different. But it definitely does give us this opportunity to really go and help others. And I think that is, and me being me, especially having always been such a people pleaser and so empathic, I love that, because that's what I love to do. I love helping others, and it absolutely pains me when I see people who are out there who are hurting and who are struggling and who do not believe in themselves, and they do not feel that they can take another step forward. And the same for you in the role that you do. We now are in this beautiful space where we're like, you know what, I'm just here to be your stepping stone, because I believe in you. And I know that even though this feels like it's bigger than Ben-Hur right now, I know that you can get through it, because what I've been through, what you've been through, you have moved yourself through it. I have moved myself through it. So now it's about going, well, you know what, we can now help everybody else move through it. And like I said, you never forget, you never, ever, ever forget the experience. And your story is so unique to yourself. But it is having that choice to go, like you said, grief can either destroy you or it can really support you to go on and do something else. And I really hope that for everybody who works with you, Chris, and everybody who is listening to your podcast, that they really choose to look at their grief, like you said, being covered with the shitty wrapping paper, in the sense of that they can let go of that today, even if it's just in the most smallest amount, but just to let go and have the courage to take that step to move forward, because you are never, ever, ever alone. You're 100% never, ever alone. And I really hope people really, really realize that, because you're not alone.
I think that's one of the big things people struggle with grief a lot. And, as a lost parent, this is where I really saw it. The lost
Mhm.
community, man, it is lonely over there. I mean, there are so few people that really understand what you went through. They get it.
Yeah.
And when you try to explain it to people that don't get it, it feels even more isolating, even more triggering. It's almost like being traumatized again. And so you almost feel in this place of just like, I can't explain this story to you, or I can't share this with you. And I know you shared a little bit about that when we first met, really being uncertain about, do I want to share my story? Do I feel safe doing that? Am I going to be okay doing it? It's all these things that we go through in grief and trauma of really figuring out what's safe for me, what's not safe for me. And, particularly when it comes down to narcissistic abuse, like you and I have gone through, it's very scary because we are dealing with somebody that is not capable of empathy. They're not capable of understanding. They're not capable of coming to the table and working through issues together. It's always going to be seen as a combative environment where I've got to get my way no matter what cost. And that's really difficult to work through. And I wanted to ask you about that since we were talking about narcissism a bit. That's a very challenging topic because a lot of people that I've ever tried to open up and talk to about it will always say, "Oh, well, you can't always call people a narcissist. It's just they're having a bad day. Oh, it's just who they are." I think it's very hard for people to go through that kind of abuse like you and I have because it's a word that has become very overutilized to label a behavior when in reality it is a clinical definition on the psychology spectrum, but it's also something that I've come to learn is a pattern of behavior over time. It's not a one-off circumstance. So I wanted to get your opinion on that aspect of narcissistic abuse.
Look, absolutely. I think, for first and foremost, we can all display narcissistic traits. Each and every one of us can be manipulative. Each and every one of us can gaslight. Each and every one of us can trigger people. We can all do that. But you're right, it's an absolute pattern that occurs, especially over time. Um, I think the other thing with narcissism is that there's two things. I think the good thing is that it's being spoken about a lot more now, that it is coming to the forefront, and where people are being able to express their story. The other thing is, unless you have been through it, you're not ever going to fully understand it. Because honestly, I know I look at this and I look at my own story, my own experience. I honestly felt like I was Alice in Wonderland sitting at the Mad Hatter's tea party, because of the level of confusion. Because narcissists are very good at moving the goalposts. They are very good at creating a set of rules for themselves, but another set for you. And you just never, ever truly know where you stand. So there is always this sense of feeling insecure, because that's exactly what they do. They're very good at pulling you in, feeding you the breadcrumbs, hooking you, to then discarding you, pushing you away. So it's a very push-pull kind of relationship. And unless you are basically playing their game and keeping them happy to a certain degree, then everything is sort of smooth sailing. And once you start calling them out on stuff, and you start speaking the truth and calling them out on that behavior, that's when it can absolutely blow up on you.
Yeah, I've tried to tell people that if you really want to know a true narcissist, if you've ever watched lightning scatter across the sky and you see lightning branch out in about 10 or 15 ways, wherever that lightning starts, that initial strike is kind of where you can say that's an issue that you want to talk about or discuss. And when it crackles across the sky, that's what a narcissist does. They layer things in a very, very complex way. I almost call it a lightning spider web. And the reason they do
Yeah.
that is to create confusion and create chaos and almost make you forget about what it was even about to begin with, that you try to discuss or resolve with them. And through that
Mm.
mess and that chaos and that convoluted thing, somehow it becomes back to your fault and your problem and your issue. And that's where they, like you said, they move the goalpost around so much. And you never ultimately know where you stand. So you're always confused and in the midst of all this chaos, and you're trying to figure something out, but you really can't put your finger on it. That's what it's like being around a narcissist.
Yeah. Yeah, because
Yeah.
you can't. You honestly, you cannot put your finger on it. Like you'll know that it's something you know, you could look at it, for example, if they're saying they're off seeing other people without you knowing about that, they're developing relationships with other people in your relationship, and you might have an inkling, and you might be going, there's something not right, and you might try, like, oh, seriously, you become a bit like an FBI agent because you're trying to you're trying to find the proof. I want the evidence. But they are so good at the secretiveness. They are so good at shifting things, and that even though you're digging and you're trying to find stuff, it's like it's just like you can't, because it is just that well sort of hidden until it becomes that apparent that you go, okay, well, here it is. So yeah, they are very good at, again, like I said, moving that goalpost. So you are continually like running around the field going, oh, hang on, I found, oh no, we've moved again. And so it really is. And like you said, with the lightning in the sky, it starts here and then it's like out this way, because it is, because all of a sudden you're like, you think you're here, but then you're here, but then no, hang on, I'm over here too. So yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's and the big question I do get often with narcissist conversations I have with coaching clients is I always get asked this question about trauma bonds. Um,
Mm.
and I had somebody online ask me one day, how do you break a trauma bond? And I said, I'm going to tell you right now, this is not a quick get over it easy thing. It is not that. And the reason it's not is because narcissists are really great at tying emotional bonds to those things. And that's why you have a hard time, even when you see the abuse, or you, like you just said, Annie, you're like, I think there's something there. I can't put my finger on it. That's a trauma bond they create because they keep you in that confusion land to stay in that bond. And that's where that power, the trauma bond, people don't understand, is that's their way of keeping control on you. That's keeping them in your world. And what I think is really helpful, I try to tell people about trauma bonds, is that for you to break that, one of the best things you can do is distance yourself from that person or distance yourself from that situation. Because ultimately, what you have to do is go through those emotions and those feelings you have before you even get down the road to the other side. You've got to start processing for yourself how you feel, how you think, those emotions you're experiencing, to really unravel that thing we just talked about. And then that allows you to see what's going on. And then at
Mm.
that other point, you can really start to break it. But it is a big process, I think. And I wanted to get your opinion on that. It's a
Yeah.
process to break a trauma bond.
It's absolutely huge, and it's interesting because I do talk about trauma bond in my book, The Narcissistic Playbook. And the one thing is absolutely, it is so imperative, if you can, to go no contact. And that in itself, and I know for me, when I chose to go no contact, it was like I had to, is it was grief all over again. And I think for me, that actually was the toughest thing that I ever had to do, was to all of a sudden cut this person off. And it was like I had ripped my own chest out of my heart. Like I said, I'd known this person for more than half my life. This person I felt that it was the love of my life. And to all of a sudden go no contact it's such a huge thing. But honestly, by going no contact, by creating that distance, it gives you that time to truly grieve. It gives you that time and that space to really pull things apart, where you can pull things apart and look at it like all of a sudden it's like basically you've got puzzle pieces in a box, and the pieces have gone flying everywhere. By having that space, it allows you to start to put those pieces back together again, because you not only get to, I guess, truly acknowledge what you've been through. And I think that's the biggest thing. And I did struggle with acknowledging that here I was, this person in this particular kind of relationship, which I had no clue, to then going, okay, this is now the reality, to then, well, who the hell am I? And then having that space to truly find the compassion within yourself. Number one, it is so important to forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for all of your mistakes. Forgive yourself for not knowing. Forgive yourself for ignoring red flags. Forgive yourself for all of it, because you were just doing what you thought was right at that particular point in time. And then
Yeah.
it's about starting to pick up those pieces and going, all right, you know what? This is me now. What is it? What do I truly want? And I know that that can be such a huge question for people, because I really struggled with that question too, because I was such a people pleaser and I was so used to doing everything that it was, what would I like to do? Well, actually, what would you like to do? Like, do you think we could do, would you want to do that? Oh, you want to do that? All right, well, let's do that. That was me. So it's really important to start to take that time to really focus on you and to heal you, heal that inner child, heal you, look at the role that you have played, and have love and compassion for yourself. Become your own best friend. You're with yourself 24/7. So why not become your own best friend? Honestly, become your own best friend. And that's what's going to give you the power, the strength, and the courage to start to help you move through and to start breaking away from those trauma bonds.
Annie, the biggest thing I took away from what you just said is something that's not talked about a lot, which is self-forgiveness. And that's something that I've taken some personal time to work on. And I wanted to share with anybody listening to this podcast. I have a real life example on top of yours. It took me 2 years to work towards self-forgiveness. It didn't happen overnight. And I can share, for our listeners today, self-forgiveness is not about other people. It's about you. And something I can share that was really helpful for me on that self-forgiveness journey, I created an activity for self-forgiveness. And what I did is broke out a piece of paper and a pen. I wrote self-forgiveness across the top. And when you go through narcissistic abuse, you'll have plenty of examples, by the way. I promise you that. You will not be short of thinking about scenarios and situations and
Definitely not.
and the point of it is to sit down and write down the situation you happen to have. And I remember there was a situation that I didn't necessarily agree to, but I went along with it because like you, I had people pleasing tendencies and bad ones. I was like, I don't really feel comfortable with this, but I guess I'll just do it. And then I would hate myself after it. I would say I knew that was going to happen. I knew this was going to be the outcome. And I would beat myself up for it. And the point of my exercise and how this really helped me is I sat down and wrote down exactly what that was. I wrote the whole situation down. And then what I did is I flipped it around. Instead of focusing on the narcissist, I wrote down, I tolerated and allowed this situation to happen. This was my part in and being part of this. And I wrote it down. And it's uncomfortable at first when you're a people pleaser because you start saying, ugh, I'm like at fault, I'm at blame. It's not that. It's really observing just what you participated in. And then I wrote down, I tolerated and allowed this. I don't
Yeah.
have to do this again. This was my
No.
choice to tolerate and allow it. I know better next time not to do this. And I'll share with listeners, and I hope you feel the same on this one too. But when you get down to that place of telling yourself that I now have permission to make decisions and choices for me, I now no longer have to tolerate and allow this kind of behavior to be treated a certain way. It almost doesn't bring anger, but it brings this freeing sense off of you. It's like dropping rocks off your shoulders, and you're going, "Ugh, I feel free again, and I don't have to."
Yeah. Yeah. And I love how you've just said about the rocks, because I actually always say with my clients, it's like you're carrying around a backpack and it's full of rocks. And it's basically about putting that backpack down and really start taking the rocks out, because you don't have to carry this anymore. Everything is a choice. We have a choice. We can either choose to carry around the shame, the guilt, the anger, the resentment, bitterness, and all of that, or we can let the rock down, put it down, and then go, you know what? I am choosing for myself love, authenticity, compassion, understanding, gratitude, because we absolutely have a choice. And I think it's also really important, this is something else I always say, is if you were to if you can get yourself to the space where you can pretend basically that you're in the courtroom and you are literally being the witness, because we've all been the victim, we can all be the prosecution, we can all be the defense, we can all be the judge. But when we can sit back and actually look at our story and start to look at it from all angles, and the role that not only we've played, but the role that everybody else has played, it really does set you free, because you can honestly then look at it and go, you know what, from a very objective perspective, I did enable that to happen. I did that because that was my role. What this person did was not right and it's not okay. But you know what? I'm giving myself permission to start to stand up for myself. I'm giving myself permission to start to really love who I am. I'm giving myself permission to live a life that feels fulfilling for me. And that's what it then becomes. And honestly, that is where the confidence and the power, the empowerness comes into it, because you are all of a sudden stepping back, you're letting go, you're accepting the situation for what it is, you're accepting everybody's role within this situation, you're accepting your own role, and now you have this choice and this opportunity to go, you know what? From now on, I am going to be better and do better. This is what I want for me. And that's where it is in breaking free and getting over to the other side. And I look at this now. I am so incredibly grateful for my journey. It's not okay, but I am so incredibly grateful. This has been one of the biggest life lessons that I've ever learned. This has been my absolute greatest teacher. And I honestly would not change it for the world, because it has enabled me to be where I am today. And I absolutely love what I do. And I love that I get to connect with people like you, Chris, on the other side of the world, where we are absolutely having conversations about this, and where we are not only supporting each other, but also encouraging and supporting other people within our communities.
That's really beautiful what you said, Annie, because that's something that I have come to learn on my own journey I've been taking with this podcast, is that it doesn't matter where you are, Australia, the United States, the UK, you could be in Russia, Africa, Canada, wherever you want to be. We all experience similar things of life on an array of levels, despite our cultures, despite our belief systems, despite our countries. We still experience these same problems, these same issues of
Absolutely,
life,
yeah.
and the fact that if we can see that, just because you're in Australia and just because I'm in the US doesn't mean we don't face the same challenges in the same way. And so our ability to come together at that point and look at our greatest life lessons, as you brought it up, and say we can help other people with that because we've gone through it. That's such a beautiful gift that can come out of something so damaging and so painful, but create purpose through that pain and create meaning through it. And to be able to change people's lives on that scale, I was thinking the other day, I don't remember what show I was watching, but somebody made this comment about cell phones, and it was this tiny little cell phone with a tiny little screen on it. And I was thinking about, not even 15 years ago, we didn't have Zoom, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have all these, smartphones on, we didn't have all that stuff. So being able to talk to somebody like you in Australia would have been incredibly difficult. And also
Yes.
very expensive, right? Because we'd have to use weekend minutes and after 9.
100%.
But now we have such a beautiful gift, right? I mean, not on
Yeah.
top of our gift of surviving abuse, but just to give back to people and now do it across the world. It's such an honor. Um,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, and,
And like you said, doesn't matter where you are in the world, each and every one of us is experiencing something. We've all got something going on. So yeah, we do.
So Annie, as we wrap up the show, you've been an awesome guest today. I'm so glad we got to do this. I like to ask two questions at the end of my show. My first one that I want to ask, this one's really for the listeners and also people that are going through grief right now or just starting to go through that process or even feel stuck, by the way, because that does happen. What are one or two things of advice you would share with somebody that is going through that process right now?
I think the first thing is be really kind to yourself. Stop berating yourself, stop criticizing yourself. Grief is a journey, there's no time limit on it. There's nothing to get there and go, I should be over this by now. You are where you are at this particular point in time. So the first thing I always say is just honestly find it within yourself to have the love and the compassion to just allow yourself to feel. The second thing is then is I love, and you mentioned it before, is that you wrote it all out. It's so important to really express out your emotions because the body keeps the score. So my other thing to you is get out a notepad, get out a pen, or type it up on your screen, but write up every absolutely little thing that you were feeling at this particular point in time. And if you're crying, that's okay. Cry, continue to cry until you can cry no more, and then cry some more. If you're feeling angry, then release that anger. Go and lock yourself in a safe space and punch the hell out of your pillow. Jump up and down, throw a massive tantrum. Just let it all out until you can do it no more, and then do it again. And the other biggest thing is really start to become your own best friend. And the one way to do that, and as Louise Hay has always taught us, is to go to that mirror and do mirror work. And that is standing there and looking at yourself right in the eyes, in the mirror. Very hard. I know when I first did it, I was just like, this is crazy. There was so much resistance. But it's to say, I love you. I really, really love you. So it's getting there and say your name. So for me, it was like, Annie, I love you. I really, really love you. And if you struggle with saying that, then put the word in willing. I am willing to love you. I am willing to like you. I love and approve of myself because everything starts with you. But the number one thing is really starting to truly pouring that self-love and that compassion in for yourself. You need this. You need you at the moment.
That's beautifully said, Annie. I love that advice. And I know that, for our listeners, that mirror work might sound uncomfortable. I certainly did it after one of our talks you and I had. And I remember looking in the mirror and I was going, I'm talking to myself right now. This is kind of weird. Um, but I got to a place where I just said, I know where I'm at in life right now. And I said, myself needs to hear this right now. And I need to say certain things to myself. And it was a powerful exercise, I'll tell you that. It got comfortable after doing it a few times.
Mirror work is honestly one of the most transformational, the most powerful tools you'll ever do. And even when you're not feeling like it, walk past the mirror, give yourself a high five. Even praise yourself in the mirror. If you got out of bed today and you managed to wash your face, then be like, high five to me. I got out of bed today and I washed my face. It's the smallest things. Celebrate it. Celebrate you. Even the most tiniest things. It's a step in the right direction.
I love that. Well, Annie, I just want to say thank you so much for being a guest on the Empower Grief Journey. You were officially part of this journey now, by the way, with the rest of my guests, who
Thank
are
you.
it's an awesome collective of people that I found across the world, and I'm just very grateful that you came on here today to share your story. And I love your business name, by the way, Rise and Heal, because I really feel that you are that person that's like a phoenix from the ashes. You crumbled all the way to the ground and you came right back up. You didn't sit down. You stayed flying high. And you're now in a place where you're getting to help and serve other people going through similar life circumstances. And I just think you're an awesome person for that.
Thank you. And right back at you. Thank you ever so much. I so appreciate being on this journey. And honestly, I just absolutely love what you do. And I just love and adore you. So thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank all of our listeners today for joining Annie and I on today's episode of the Empower Grief Journey. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with somebody that you know could benefit from Annie's story. The Empower Grief Journey is all about honoring your journey, embracing your emotions, and finding strength in your own time. I want to invite you to follow our podcast at empowergriefjourney.com. I want you guys also to know that are listening, you're never alone on this journey, and together we can navigate grief with courage and compassion. Until next time, be kind to yourself and take your grief journey one step at a time.